This is the My Campaign Coach podcast, where we talk about how to win elections. Every week, we let you hear straight from the best consultants, operatives, and candidates in the game, all for one reason, to help you win. For more information about how we can help you win, visit mycampaigncoach.com. Now, here's your host, Raj Schaefer.
Welcome to the How to Run for Office podcast from My Campaign Coach. Before we get started today, I want to remind y'all to go to our website, mycampaigncoach.com, and sign up for our email list. Each week, we provide a digest of all of our new content, as well as exclusive campaign tips and opportunities. You can also find us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and more. So go to mycampaigncoach.com for details and all the links to point you in the right direction. Today's interview is a special one for me because I'm talking with somebody who has had an enormous impact on my life and career. His recommendation shortly before I graduated opened the door to my first job, and his mentorship has been of incalculable value to me both before and after that point. Rick Green is an attorney, author, former elected official, father, mentor, radio host, inspirational speaker, and soon we're going to add grandfather to that list of accomplishments. The work that Rick and his family have done to promote our nation's founding principles has been a great source of energy with the conservative movement, and my life especially. Beyond the incredible family that Rick and his beautiful bride, Kara, have raised, I believe his greatest legacy is going to be the organization that first cemented our friendship, which is Patriot Academy. Over the 14 years that Patriot Academy has been training young conservatives, they've turned out hundreds, if not thousands, of motivated, principled conservatives who are impacting policy and campaigns across this country. Rick, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Hey, Raz, great to be with you, bro. Thanks for having me, man.
It is always a great time talking with you. You're busy running around the country speaking, motivating conservatives, and training young people. But before we start talking about your bio and how you got here, I really wanted to step back for a second and see how you're coping with the fact you're fixing to be a granddad.
Just hearing you say that in the intro, I felt like, wow, man, I'm old. I must be old. No, we're really, really blessed and excited. But it does, man, it makes you think, wow, I'm already into a third generation. That's kind of scary and exciting.
Well, you and my dad can start a support group. We got ours coming in October, and so we're already trying to get him used to monikers and all the different names he's gonna be called. So you guys can start a support group.
That'll be great. We text every once in a while, so I'll be texting him for support here in a couple of months.
Very, very nice. Well, you have to ask him what he thought of this podcast episode because he's a regular listener. So I know at least my dad listens, if not that many other people do.
That's great.
So let's start back before you and I got to know each other. We have known each other for a long time, but let's start back. How did you get involved in politics, and what it was like for you growing up and finding your passion for this crazy business?
You know, I was raised in a family where we talked about this kind of stuff, so it wasn't totally foreign. I mean, my dad was always bringing up whatever was going on in the world, and I don't think he purposely instilled a love for it. It was just kind of I guess got it by hanging out with him and listening to him and at the dinner table kind of stuff. So like a lot of people that get into this at a young age, I had someone in my life sort of breathing that into me. So when I got to college, I was already sort of paying attention to what was going on. It happened to be when the first Gulf War happened, and so I had started a college Republican club, and that war actually became an opportunity for us to begin to have a voice, because you started already hearing all the no blood for oil and all the protesters and on a college campus, of course, and sort of stirred my desire to enter the debate, if you will. So at 19, I was already, organizing students and having rallies for our buddies that were over there fighting, and had a mom actually come up to me. We did this candlelight vigil one night, and had several hundred people come out, and I gave my first real speech. And this mom comes up afterwards, and I was talking to the guys that we knew that had been called up and went over, and so our message was to them, but their families had shown up at this rally, and this mom comes up crying and just saying thanks for doing this and for honoring our my son and the others. And the message to me was, hey, it pays to skip class and not go to school and instead get out there and do politics. You can impact people. So that was really what got my passion started.
Clearly that was the right takeaway from that story. I'm sure that's exactly what your parents wanted you to take away.
Yeah.
Wow. So you got your first taste there at 19, helping organize things. You got more and more involved as time went by with conservative organizations on campus, and coming out, you started your own businesses and started doing lots of work there. And went to law school. Talk us through how that, what kind of went from between there and running for state rep in the late '90s.
Well, I had, I always did everything, I guess, quickly and on a schedule of I wanted to be at the next level. I was really bad about not enjoying the phase I was in. So I'm in college. I'm more worried about wanting to be in law school and in politics. Getting into law school, I'm more worried about I want to be in business and politics. So again, not going to class much. I was starting my own businesses and campaigning for other candidates and finding ways to get involved politically. And really by accident. I mean, I had helped with several campaigns, so I got invited to this briefing for the state Republican Party, and the guy that was the political director at the time is sitting in the back of the room, and I'm 26 at the time, and still in law school. Technically, I was really running my business, but supposed to be in law school. and I went over to this guy, and I'm like, hey, one of the speakers got up and said we needed 8 more Republicans in Texas before we could really do anything. What can I do to help defeat the guy in my home district? And he looks up at me and says, yeah, that's a great idea, Rick. You should run. I said, no, that's not what I said. I said, what can I do to help? I had not even thought about running at that age. And he convinced me to go for it. I mean, I already had a family and one kid and a business and employees and all that. So I was a little bit more experienced than most 26-year-olds, but still it was a lot to bite off. And we ended up winning and kind of, baptism by fire, I guess.
See, Rick, when you messed up there, one of those classes you skipped in law school was when they told you never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. And that guy just got you. You weren't expecting that. He got you hooked, and that led to everything else.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Wow. So you went in there, you beat this guy, incumbent there. Now you're a state rep. How old are you at this point?
27 by the time I was sworn in. Wow.
So you were a youngster.
Yeah, but it's becoming. There's more and more people getting elected at that age, and as I told when you were at Patriot Academy, I remember saying this that wait till you're older, do some things in life first, and I was probably too young. I think I was okay in terms of life experience on I'd been paying property taxes, I had been paying the employee taxes, so I had a perspective on how much government takes from us, and raising a family and all that, but. I think just there's a maturity level for a legislative position that I think I encourage others to wait till they're in their 30s, just so that spiritually they're a little deeper and all those other things. So I think I was in a unique position. I still encourage people to wait till they're a little bit older for that. But I'll tell you, Raz, I'm changing my tune on that with regard to other offices. I'm wanting to see more young people run now at the city council, school board,
Absolutely.
Water district level, and you may be wanting to get into that later in the interview, but just so you know, my perspective on that is definitely changing, and I hope we see more young people run, because I'm telling you, the 40 and 50-year-olds running those local government entities right now, they have no perspective on, they have no problem taking other people's money and wasting it. So I'd rather have a young person that's been through Patriot Academy that has some good conservative perspective in those positions than these, 40s and 50-year-olds that, frankly, I think have terrible perspective right now.
So let's go a little bit deeper on that. Unpack for me a little bit about why you think some of the younger folks ought to wait on a legislative seat. What are the barriers there, or the things that they might need to have? Because obviously some people, we had a number of folks in the state legislature here in Texas that have been in their late 20s that could just become rock stars.
Yeah.
I got friends like Jonathan Hill, and I interviewed Montana Representative Zolnikoff a few weeks ago. There was, he's like 25 when he got elected. There are examples of people doing great jobs doing that. But what are, some of it may be separate from age, right? It comes down to some maturity levels.
Yes.
What are some of those things that if I'm, looking at a potential candidate, or maybe I am one, what are red flags that I should look at, or how should I go through processing whether or not I'm ready, if it's not based on age?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're exactly right. It's more of an individual thing. And I think I've always thrown out that blanket, wait till you're older. For most people, always saying, look, there are exceptions to the rule. I think Jonathan Hill's a great exception to that rule. There's a couple of folks up in Oklahoma that got elected in 2021 that I think have turned out to be stellar. Seeing a lot of other in early 20s, even not even late 20s, get elected now that are doing a great job. And certainly here in Texas, I've seen quite a few in their mid to late 20s that have turned around and just been fantastic. So, again, I think I'm changing my tune a little bit, but your question is more spot on. What do you look for, especially if you're the person considering running and you're in your 20s and you're going, okay, am I ready? It looks like doors are opening. And that's one of the first things are you having to beat the door down, or are the doors being open to you? Are people coming to you and saying, man, you got something, you got a gift in this area, you should consider running. And if you're getting multiple confirmations like that from people, then I think you should at least consider it. And as you said, then start looking for the red flags. And the number one thing I look for and ask people to ask in their own heart is, am I wanting to do this so people know who I am and get my name in lights and all that kind of stuff? Is this about being somebody, or is it truly about doing something? In other words, have I looked at this and gone, okay, obviously a better job could be done. I'm looking at what government's doing,
Right.
and a better job could be done. And I think I have what it takes to go in there and do that. And if you're motivated by the do something part of the equation, then I think you keep chipping away at that question and keep going. But if in your own heart, oh no, I want to walk in the room and everybody know who I am. I want to have an office at the Capitol or whatever. If you're motivated by that, then that's a red flag. And it's not that we don't all have personal desires and we're all driven to know that we're significant and making a difference. That's okay. So if you have a little bit of that, I'm not saying that rules you out, but it is that red flag where you really have to ask for some advice from people in your life and make sure you're not driven by that.
Well, and that humility you mentioned is so important, because it's really easy, I think, even for good, conservative, Christian people that would consider themselves reasonably humble, it's pretty easy for us to get excited about making that difference and all of a sudden get trapped in a place where we are truly there's at least far too much of our motivation, maybe even not a majority, but there's far too much of our motivation comes from a desire for it to be our name there, to have our name up on the vote board, to have an office there in the Capitol.
Yeah.
And one of the guys, our good friend, Matt Krause, the state representative here in Texas, great example of somebody that's a young guy, somebody that's very involved with Patriot Academy on your board. And when he was on here a few months ago, he talked about just how he looks at that title of representative and how the commitment that he and his wife, Jenny, made from day one is that they did not want that title to become their identity and really the key of who they were as people or as a family. And what that allows them to do is his identity is still as a husband, as a Christian, as a conservative, as a father. And so when he's deciding on what he does down there in Austin, it makes that process easier. He's not worried about, hey, what is this going to do to my chances of being reelected next time? It comes down to fealty to principle and to his district. And if he does a good job by that and he loses his seat as a result of it, that's something he can stand firm and be comfortable with. And I think, to your credit, that's something that you exemplified down there during your time in the state capitol. Sadly, it ended up you were on the losing side of that. You did some great stuff down there and ended up losing a very, very close, very very difficult personal race down there to Representative Rose, and that kind of puts you on a different path there. Talk to me about kind of how your time in the House went, lessons you learned there for new candidates or new members, and kind of how you moved through that loss to figure out what your purpose and what your political mission was at that point.
Sure, be glad to. If I could back up just a second in response to what you were saying about Matt,
Absolutely.
Because I think you're right. Krause is a perfect example of a person that went into this young to do something, not to be somebody. And I so appreciate how he articulates that and how he sets up his identity to not be tied to representative. And the proof is in the results and what people do. You can tell, and this is why it really matters. If that's a red flag for a person that's listening, that's thinking about running, the reason you want to get solid on that question of, am I in this to be somebody or do something, is because if you are leaning too much into the be something, then when you get there, you're going to want to stay there or move to the next level. And that's going to be your motivation more than doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
And that's what causes so many politicians to compromise, to do things that they look back later and go, how did I end up voting for that? Why did I sell out on that issue? And it's because they wanted to be somebody more than they wanted to do something. You look at a guy like Matt and so many others that we know, and they've constantly stood for principle, even though they could have gotten further politically had they sold out. So the be something part could have gone further for them if they'd been willing to sell out sell their principles out. but instead they stuck to the do something. They stuck to the principles. And frankly, Matt's been well rewarded, I think. I think he's become a champion in Texas. And now there's so many of us across the state that appreciate what he's done. We're going to go to bat for him. If he decides to run for a higher office, we're going to be there for him. If they come after him, which they haven't in a hard way yet, we're going to be there to defend him. So it does pay off politically in the long run in most cases, So anyway, I just think that it's important for potential candidates to know why that's so important, to check that in their spirit and make sure they know why they're doing it and that it really is for the cause and not for the name.
Well, and one good way as far as a self-check to say, hey, am I exemplifying that, is how do you receive advice that goes counter to what your plan is? And Matt, once again, is a great example. When I first met him, myself and our good friend Drew Ryan, Matt came through our training program, and he came in there, he said, we talked this on Matt's episode when he was on a few months ago. Matt came in, he wanted to run for Congress, and he was all gung-ho and was sure that he was going to beat the incumbent. And he walked out of there with us having told him, Matt, you're stupid to run for Congress. That's a silly idea. You need to run for state rep. You're going to lose, and you need to be ready to run again. And granted, that was mainly Drew's advice, not mine. I was still pretty wet behind the ears. But Matt, he didn't just blow up or say, oh, these guys are ridiculous. They don't understand me. They don't understand my genius and how I'm going to go, my strategic plan for beating this congresswoman. He walked out of there, and I don't think he was sold at the beginning, but he didn't react negatively. He thought about it. He prayed about it. He studied our advice and came back and said, you know what? That absolutely makes sense. That's what I need to do. Mm-hmm. And when somebody gives you advice that runs counter to what your pre-made plan is, if you're listening, if you're considering it, if you're prayerful, if you seek other opinions to gauge how strong that advice is, that's a good sign. That shows a lot of maturity. If, however, anytime somebody goes counter to your pre-baked plan, it makes you blow up or get angry, even if you don't show it, even if it's just internal, that is a sign that you need to take some time to step back, examine your reasons and your own internal maturity level to see if this is the right time for you.
That's really good, Raz. Really good. The longer that beard gets, the more wise you are, man. I'm telling you, that is awesome. It's so true. And Matt, I mean, what a perfect example. You guys were spot on. First time he ran, he lost. And then he came back and ran again. And think about how important that advice from y'all was to him, because his heart was prepared for, if I lose, I'm going to come right back and run again. I actually thought I was going to lose first time. In fact, Royal gave me a little bit of the same advice. Said, you may lose the first time, but you're building up your name ID and come back and win the second time. So man, that's just good stuff. And that is a great measure, is how do you receive that advice and that mentorship that comes from the people God puts in your life.
So how did you go, and go through your time in the house and then transition out of that? Kind of walk us through some of those lessons you learned in that time frame.
Sure. I mean, for me, it was I really enjoyed. I had 2 terms, 4 years in the House. We did not have the majority, so the part I didn't like is obviously being in the minority and not being able to get a whole lot done. You felt like you were beating your head against the wall, and so there was a lot of frustration on that front. But to learn how the process works, to be in there and really for the first time realize, the people that are there. See, how can I say this in without being disparaging to too many people? I used to have this image in my mind that the people that were in the legislature were absolutely the smartest, most capable, most articulate, just cream of the crop of the whole state. And listeners can't see your smile right now, right? I can't.
You're telling me that's not true, Rick? Oh my! I'm shocked. Shocked. I say.
The opposite was true. I mean, it was like I would walk around and just be amazed and think, how did this person get elected? And not that, I mean, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, and I've got my own flaws, and I'm sure people looked at me and thought the same thing. How did this guy end up here? But it was just, it was an eye-opener for me that truly anybody that really has a desire and is willing to put in the hard work, and if the doors are open to them, they can end up there. And so when I realized that, it became all the more important to find people that had core convictions and had that solid foundation first, and then help get them connected to the right people so they could win. Because most of these people, at the time I was there, now I don't know if I could say that today because I think things have changed some, but at the time I was there, a lot of those people literally fell into the job. I mean, it was not even, it was almost like accidental. They just happened to be the person that somebody went to and said, you ought to consider this. It just shocked me, Raz. I really, really didn't expect that. And so I think the message for your listeners would be, don't be discouraged or think this is something you can't do. If you go visit Austin and you go look at that Capitol and you think, oh, that's another world, that's a different breed, there's no way, that's a different class, don't be fooled by that. That's what I thought. And my dad was the one that said, not true. If you're supposed to be there and God wants you there and you put in the elbow grease and all those things, you can get there. And I just think people need to realize that. And they're just as capable as 99% of that legislature. And there's some stellar people there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we've already talked about Matt. I think he's one of those. But there's a lot of people that are there that you think, how in the world did they get here? They're not even good speakers. And you think a candidate that makes it to the legislature, well, they must be able to get up in front of a room and do really well and speak well. I mean, some of the top people in the legislature, even today, they get up in front of a room and they can't hardly put two sentences together. It's amazing to me. They're not good in front of a room. So that was a big lesson for me early on, is that, realize that anybody can get here. Let's go find people that have the right convictions and equip them to get here. And that's kind of how Patriot Academy got started, was that frustration, looking for an outlet and saying, let's do something about this. And then another quick lesson that I learned real quick in the legislature was that, I thought it was going to be, my side and the conservatives or Republicans line up over here every day and we duke it out with the other side. And I found, that I ended up building great relationships with people that sometimes were moderate Republicans or even liberal Democrats. But on that particular issue, we saw eye to eye. And so we locked shields together and went and did battle. So one lesson I think that I wish I had known going in was, don't burn bridges. Don't look at a person that happens to be your enemy on one issue as an enemy as a person. They might be the opposition on that particular issue, but fight honorably and almost like the knights of old, have honor in the way that you do battle so that you can lock shields with them on the one or two issues that you might end up agreeing with them on. And that's important on the campaign trail too. And that doesn't mean, don't take this wrong. I'm not saying don't play hard. Don't punch when you need to punch, take the shots you need to take on the campaign trail. Don't be afraid to use the things that you need to use to win that are legitimate and honest and true about your opponent, but just have some honor in the way that you do it so that once you get there, you can team up with people, even if they might have been your opposition on another battle.
Well, in one of our interviews a couple of weeks ago, we talked with one guy. We were kind of distilling down some of these rules of campaigns, and what we came up with was stand for principle, don't lie, and be nice. And if you can do those three things, you're probably going to get elected. This is kindergarten level stuff.
That's
but
good.
You're exactly right. There are so many people, many of them liberal, many of them moderate Republicans down there, and there are those rare opportunities to partner with them. If you behave yourself as a good person, if you are honorable, if you do what you say you're going to do, even if you disagree on stuff, you'll at least be able to work with them and have some level of trust on the issues where you naturally find agreement. And those may be rare or those may be common, but you've got to treat a lot of it just comes down to core character, right? And that's why Patriot Academy's had such a great role, is because those are things that I cannot teach you. I can teach people how to run a campaign, right? That's a lot of what I do. I can teach people how to go knock doors and how to give a speech or how to target their voter blocks, but I can't teach somebody how to be honest, how to be loyal, how to be hardworking. If you have those intangibles and you come through Patriot Academy or through one of these campaign trainings, then you're gonna be off the races. That's the stuff that can be taught, and when the combination of those intangibles with the knowledge of how these strategic and tactical functions are combined, that's a powerful combination.
Man, no doubt about it. And what you just described, I mean, that's, Reagan always said everything the best, but I mean, Reagan said happy warriors, and that phrase, happy warriors out to take back a country and a world of freedom. I mean, that idea of happy warriors, that is not a spineless, backslapping, always, fake happy politician like we tend to think of too much. That's not what he's talking about. Happy warriors means you got joy, but man, you're ready with your sword, ready to do battle and fight and do what's necessary to win when called upon. And so that's that balance. And I like how you said it though. I mean, you're still being nice, but you're being honest, but you're in the battle and you're willing to fight. That's what we need. Happy warriors. They got to be willing to fight.
You're 100% correct. So at this point, you spent 4 years in the House. You lost a very, very less than a percentage point re-election run in 2002. And so now you're out of the House. You started Patriot Academy the Torch of Freedom Foundation, the parent organization for Patriot Academy, back in 2000, and now you're coming along in 2003. You're actually kicking this thing off. So there was an overlap there. You had recognized a need for training young conservatives while you were still in the House, right after you got in there, and you've been laying the groundwork for this organization over those intervening years of time in the House. Talk to us about why you started that, and then the role it's taken on over the last 14 years.
Definitely, yeah. I tried to start it while I was in the House. I mean, we had a couple of false starts, where we scheduled a week and we were gonna do it, and we just couldn't get it together, and so it took a little while, and part of that was because I was still in the House. I was trying to run for re-election or trying to serve. And so, and there was always that battle, even when I'd sit down with a potential donor for Patriot Academy. It's like, okay, do I raise money for my campaign or do I raise money for Patriot Academy?
Right.
So it definitely was that trying to sit on two stools at once type thing, and it made it difficult to get it started. So it was a blessing in a way to lose the campaign so that we could actually, really focus and launch Patriot Academy. I jokingly tell people that this idea came from, believe it or not, Bill Clinton, because my dad actually responded to a call. I'm sitting on the House floor, and the phones that are there under the desk. I'd called him out of frustration and saying, man, I can't believe how few people here actually care about their convictions. They're not just, there's this handful of guys and girls that are not putting their finger to the wind and just going with what's popular. They really understand conservatism. They understand why principles matter. They understand why conservative positions aren't just a party slogan, but they actually produce better results. And that was part of my frustration, was that everybody just fought for whatever their slogan was, but they couldn't really articulate why this produces better results for the American people or the people of Texas. And so they would sell out very easily. And I'm just complaining, literally whining to my dad over the phone and saying, we need more people here that can defend free enterprise, that can defend timeless truths, that can defend why biblical values work and all those things. And he literally said to me, and this is 1999, so if you put yourself in the context of what Bill Clinton had recently done at that point, he says to me, well, you need to do what Bill Clinton did.
It's like, whoa, Dad, come on here.
You could maybe expound on that a little bit, Dad, because I hope you're not talking about what I think. Anyway, so he said, look, Clinton had, when he was governor of Arkansas, what he called the governor's school, and he would bring in the best and brightest from all over the state, and they literally would indoctrinate them for a couple of weeks with liberal philosophy. So if you think about where they're at that point in their life, 17, 18, 19 years old, they're developing their worldview. Really, you're at that point where you're saying, this is what I believe. And what you cement as your beliefs at that point, for most people, stays that way for the rest of their life. And
right.
So, he was basically co-opting at that point, taking what a lot of conservative families had raised in their kids to be the best of the best. But then at that age where they're vulnerable in terms of their worldview, he was moving them far to the left, and it was working very well. So Dad basically said, he said, look, Rick, why can't you do that but teach truth? Just teach what the founder said about how government should work, but do it at that age of 16, 17, 18 years old. And that really launched Patriot Academy. I had gone to a school at 19 in D.C. called the Conservative Student Conference that Young America's Foundation, I think they still put it on, actually. And it wasn't a legislative simulation like we do at Patriot Academy or anything like that, but it was a time of young conservatives coming together and being taught by guys like Newt Gingrich and Dinesh D'Souza and all these people. And I came home from that for the first time thinking, hey, it's okay to be 19 and be conservative. It's okay to be 19 and be thinking about these kind of things. It's actually cool to be in this arena. And so it really got me fired up. And that was when I started doing a lot of the college Republican stuff and the rallies and all that. So anyway, those two things kind of meshed. And the idea was, okay, so if we do this, if we bring young people in from all over the state, let's make it fun. Let's make it engaging. Let's do process so they can actually serve as a legislator. And then in that crucible of pressure being put on them from people saying you need to vote this way or you need to vote that way, in that crucible, make that the leadership laboratory and teach them the right worldview, teach them the truth, and give them examples. Put people in front of them like a Matt Krause. This was obviously before Matt was in the House, but guys like him, let's put people like that in front of them that they can be inspired by and say, I want to do that. If they can do it, I can do it. I want to go serve like that. So that's what started Patriot Academy. And like I said, it took a couple of years to get it going. But once I was out of the House that very next summer, we were able to have our first one. and man, it just took off from there, and now we've got graduates out there doing things like what you're doing, guys like Jonathan Hill that you mentioned that are serving in legislatures across the country, running campaigns, making movies, going into business. We're excited about what it's done, and even more excited about what we hope to do in the future.
So how many alumni do you guys have of the Patriot Academy program? Because it started out here in Texas, but you guys are doing like 5 or 6 or 7 a year in different states now, right? You got a ton of alumni.
Yeah, we're doing we do a Southwest Academy at the Arizona Capitol there in Phoenix. We do a Northwest Academy at the Idaho Capitol in Boise. Our Northeast Academy is in Dover, Delaware, so it's the Delaware Capitol. And then our Southeast one is in Florida. We're opening up Virginia this year and potentially Colorado. So starting to spread out there. Total numbers, I think we've had 1,300 students actually come through the program. We've had, the regionals now are starting to be almost like a first step, so that they only get about 3 days with us we only get about 3 days with them at the regional, but it gives us a chance to start planting some seeds and kind of see how they do in that environment. And then our National Academy is still here in Texas, and that's the big one that's a full week long. That's the one where we bring in the big guns like Raz Schaefer and Luke Macias, and so we have a great time. The Texas one it's an inspiring time too, because you see hundreds of young people, and we have a citizen track for people over 25, and this year we're doing for the first time our Veterans Academy. So it's basically our Warriors Academy. So these are people in the military that either retired or active, doesn't matter, but they have a desire to be in this arena. And we're looking for, those that also have a strong spiritual foundation, biblical worldview. But they're at an age where, Raz, we have no hesitation in saying, man, you come through the Veterans Academy, as soon as you're out, we want to turn you over to a Raz Schaefer and say, hey, go run. So real excited about the potential of this Veterans Academy. That's a long answer to your question. But, yeah, we've got, I guess, a total about 6 or 7 academies going now.
That's absolutely incredible. Well, and one of the cool things is that those 1,300 people that have come through, those 1,300 alumni, most of them, or at least I know a lot of them, come multiple times. And that's one of the really cool things, because you have alumni that are coming back year after year, helping train and helping bring up faster the newbies. And I love that, because I came in 2006 was the year that I came, and that was absolutely just a phenomenal experience for me. I got to do some policy internship stuff, and I'd studied a lot and I'd volunteered a lot, but I never got to have a real taste for the legislative process. And so coming in there, it's really, really cool, because you're working all week long. You literally write up fake legislation or mock legislation ahead of time. You file that. You have to go through. You do committee hearings where you're laying out bills and you're debating, and you have like fake witnesses come in, like you or I would go in and help run these guys through the ringer on their bills, testifying for or against. It's absolutely amazing. And then, of course, you get to the floor sessions where you have 50 or 60 different folks there simulating a floor debate on the actual Texas House House of Representatives floor. It's absolutely just an intoxicating experience that helps shape you and educate you in some really, really spectacular ways.
And that floor session is kind of the part that stands out for most people, because it is just like a real session. People that come visit, they sit up in the gallery and watch. They think we're the real legislature. They'll come down there and go, we wanted to meet some legislators. But no, these are actually not the real legislators. But, we really have it down to the most realistic simulation in the country for sure. And now it's 100, 110 is what we typically have on the House floor at a time. So you nailed it. There's nothing like being in that environment. And that's what I wanted the students to feel. I want them to feel like, I really can do this. I can go in here and make a difference. And now we even have actual legislators that get elected in the primary. They'll come to Patriot Academy that summer and hang out with us all week, and sometimes even serve as a legislator so that they get practice, basically. And that way they can hit the ground running in their first legislative session, having been through it and learning a lot of the process.
Well, I know for me coming in, like I said, I'd never watched a legislative session. I really didn't know I was in for, and I had people like David White and Jennifer Lackey that were helping guide me through this process and teach me things. You pretty quickly have these bills that you start making kind of your own parties out of. There's not Republicans and Democrats. You're not given red shirts and green shirts, but pretty quickly you start having these sides develop with different folks that kind of align more naturally with others. And this is even just among conservatives and right-leaning libertarians. But with this group, you have to file your bills. You have to get the committee chairs to bring it up. You have to get it voted out of committee. You have to get the calendars committee to let it through. You have to get it onto the House floor calendar and hope the week lasts long enough that you can get yours in. I mean, all these pressures that you feel during one of our Texas 144-day sessions, you get condensed into a week. And everybody wants to get their bill passed and get signed, and it's absolutely just a whole lot of fun. I love going down there and helping you guys out with it every year, just because I get to go. The most fun is helping go testify on these bills in committee, where you have 10 people up there, however many are on the committee, and you go in and you decide, kind of flip a coin whether you want to testify for or against a bill, and they're laying it out, and you got these young people. I mean, they now I'm getting old enough they look young to me, and you get to go decide whether you want to make them have a good day or a bad day. It's kind of cruel, but it's a blast. And
it's a huge. I got to tell you, Raz, it's a huge part of what makes it successful too. Is you alumni that come back, because whether you're coming back as a student, as an alumni, and leading from within as a student, and that kind of peer-to-peer influence and kind of iron sharpening iron type thing that happens, or an alumni like yourself that comes back, even though it's 10 years ago, for you to stand there and testify, or to pull a student aside and say, hey, have you thought about this? Or, hey, you could do this better, and to kind of breathe back into them and literally invest in them. It's a huge part of what makes the Academy successful. So first of all, thank you for being willing to come and give of your time like that, and give other students the chance to have what you had. It makes a big difference. We wouldn't be able to reach as many as we reach now if it wasn't for that. But I do want to, that idea of a student coming 2 and 3 times is such a critical part of it, because first of all, it's a fire hose, and especially if you come to the Texas Academy first, the full week, it's just more than you can learn in one trip. And secondly, it does give them a chance to go from student to teacher and mentor within the process, and that's a big part of what makes it work.
Well, I know that I came in, knowing so little about the process, and I picked up a lot. But I'll tell you, Rick, one of the things that I walked away with the most from that was a remarkable sense of humility. And it's something that I did not have a whole lot of at that point in my life, as was obvious to you and pretty much everybody else there. But I walked out of there with a whole lot more humility. I got to operate around some strong conservatives who were way smarter than me. And I got to beat people on legislation that were way smarter than me. And I lost to people, in some cases, people who I didn't think were as smart as me. and so I walked out of there realizing that, one, I felt like I could do this. This was not an impossible task. It was something that I wanted to be further involved with and that I needed to learn a lot more about. But I also walked away with a newfound respect, both for people I agreed with and disagreed with, being able to work with them on legislation and issues we cared about, and realizing how much more I had to learn. I mean, because there was so much, and there's still things that I'm not good at that relate directly to that process that I learn more from every time I go down there and help out or watch a floor session. It's absolutely amazing. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like as far as what someone can expect in one of those regional or the National Academy, and what somebody should do if they want to get involved in that. Are your applications still open for this year?
Yes, they are. And I will say, Raz, like look, we're type A guys. God's gifted you with a lot of great talent. And so at 20, I don't remember what you were, 23 maybe when you came. You remember how old you were?
Oh gosh, that would have been 2006. I would have been 20.
20. Okay,
or
so
19,
even at 20,
like that.
So I thought you were older than that. So God had gifted you with speaking ability, maturity, sharp mind, all that kind of stuff. We need to be humbled sometimes when we have those gifts, and so you get around other sharp young people. It makes you realize, man, I need to constantly be improving. And I tell young people that when they consider coming, I don't care if you're a debate champ or you've never gotten up in front of a room, you're going to be around people that are going to make you better at what you do. And like you did, you came away from the process going, wow, this process itself can allow someone that's not as sharp as I think I am to actually win. And so it gives you a respect for the process too, and realizing how important it is to learn that. But I want your listeners to know, Raz, the humility that you do have, because you're one of the few guys that I've ever called and said, hey, here's a seat that we think you would be great at, and we really want you to consider running. And you had the wisdom and got advice from other people to come back and say, I don't think I'm ready yet, or I think God's got something else he wants me doing right now, and actually turn down an opportunity to run for a high level seat. So that says a lot about your maturity and your willingness to not just jump at the chance to be somebody, but to make sure that you're in the place where you can do the greatest good for the kingdom. So I appreciated that about you. That's been a few years ago, and I just want your listeners to know you've got that kind of maturity and humility as well. Answer to your actual question, yes, folks can still apply and there's still room. The application process is all on our website, patriotacademy.com. In terms of what to expect, I always tell people you're really gonna focus on three main things. You're gonna learn the process of how a legislative session works. You're gonna be immersed in it. You're gonna come out knowing more than what most freshman legislators know. Secondly, you're gonna get some incredible skills. So you're gonna learn public speaking. Even if you're already a public speaker, you're gonna learn some tools and skills that you can put in your toolbox and use that are gonna make you even better in one-on-one situations, in front of groups, whatever that might be. It's gonna make you a better communicator. So one is the process, two is the skills, and then three are the principles, the philosophy of what works and what doesn't work. Instead of going into this arena and just kind of going with what maybe looks like the best solution at the time, you really need a plumb line. You need to be able to look into history and say there's nothing new under the sun. Every policy that somebody comes up with has been tried somewhere. And so learning how to gauge that policy based on principles that are based on policies being tried in the past and knowing what works and what doesn't work is a massive advantage to you, whether you're going to go run for city council or school board or legislature or Congress or whatever it might be. So all three of those areas are going to really pay off. Young people that are listening, 16 to 25, you can come be the actual legislator. If you're over 25, you can come on our citizen track and do kind of like what Raz was just talking about and actually go and testify in committees, pick bills you want to help kill or help pass, but you still get to go through all the workshops and the training and everything else. And definitely any veterans listening, we'd love to have you on the Veterans Academy. It'll actually run in conjunction with the National Patriot Academy. So it'll be the very first weekend of August. It'll be those last 3 days of the National Academy that we'll be bringing the veterans in. And we don't have that web page up, Raz. We might have it up by the time you air this, but we'll get that up soon and give veterans an opportunity to learn how they can participate.
Man, I'm incredibly excited about the opportunities that folks have because it doesn't matter what your age is. 16 or older, you have the opportunity to come and learn more, to be involved in the process and immerse yourself in this. The speakers that they have come in, they're just some phenomenal individuals. Chris Dunham and just a ton of other people that Rick has got to know from his time speaking across the country. And they just bring in some great rock stars that help teach this process, that help mentor these young people through. And I'll tell you guys, part of the reason I want to have Rick on this podcast, we're talking about how to run for office, right? We're talking about how to prepare to be a staffer or a candidate. Well, one, I'll tell you that if you're looking for staff or you're thinking about candidates to support, look and see if they got Patriot Academy on their resume. I do a lot of hiring and I do a lot of recommendations for folks. And when I see that there's a Patriot Academy time on when I see there's Patriot Academy on someone's resume, that's going to stand out to me. I know what they've been through, and I know the caliber of the individuals they are. Plus, it also helps I can call up Rick and say, hey, is this person worth anything? But being able to have that background, when you go down to the Texas Capitol today and increasingly across other capitals across the country, you start seeing these guys walking around. We got people that are elected representatives from school boards and city councils to state rep positions, and it's really awesome. And so if you're looking as somebody that's considering a run for office and you're wondering, hey, what will it be like when I finally catch the car if I actually win this thing? This is a wonderful opportunity for you to go and find out more about it to help prep yourself. If you're somebody that's a recent elected official and you're trying to get your feet under you, go and watch, volunteer, help out. And if you're a young person that wants to be a staffer, this is a great opportunity to nail down the principles that you believe in and understand how this works in the real world with all these different types of legislation and nuances. And it also helps you understand the pressures that go on in a staff situation as far as in a legislative session, because that's something that's hard to recreate. But during that week, you get to see what staff go through, and that helps prepare you for if you get thrown in the deep end and go to work for especially a new representative. All the skills, it's absolutely incredible what you learn, and it's going to be a huge preparatory step for being more heavily involved in politics, whatever vector you're trying to go on.
Hey, Raz, I was going to throw in on the staff thing. This session, I think we have 40 or more Patriot Academy grads that are actually working at the Capitol, chiefs of staff, legislative directors, communication directors, administrative staff, lobbying for pro-family organizations or legal organizations. So they're all over the place. And one of the really cool advantages this gives you is a built-in network. So
Absolutely.
If you're thinking that's where you want to be, not only will it help you get that job, but it makes you more valuable to the rep you're working for, because you're not just bringing your own skills to the table. You're bringing this network where you can say, oh, well, I know so-and-so in so-and-so's office. I can go talk to them about that bill and kind of lay the groundwork for the member then to be able to go talk to them. There's just a lot of different things. Plus, and we want to do more training for our graduates to be staff, because we got these senior staffers like Brian Schufelt and others that have been there as chiefs of staff for multiple terms, so they can teach you what you need to know for even the mundane kind of what agency. There's so many acronyms that are going to be thrown at you. They can at least let you know what the acronyms are and which agency and whatnot. So real excited about where that's going. And one thing I'd love to get you involved with as well, Raz, is we're thinking about this year doing almost like a job fair speed dating crossover in the LCC there, where we have members that are looking for staff at each table, or guys like you that might be looking for a campaign manager for one of your clients or something like that. And these Patriot Academy students will have the opportunity to literally go table to table and get 5 minutes with these people and potentially end up with a job when the week's over, or for some of your clients out there, potentially some staff that they can find.
Man, I love that. Well, and we talk a lot on the podcast about how you need to go in, and when you're looking for a job in politics, you need to establish a track record of humility, of standing for principle, of a work ethic and loyalty. And there's few opportunities where you get to see somebody up close, from Rick, your position as running the thing, to mine as an observer, and all these different folks, alumni, participants, and helpers that are there. You get to display that, and you get to show pretty quickly whether you have it or not. Yeah. And from the outside, if you're able to perform in those environments and you show yourself to have those intangibles, man, that's just something, it's so rare that I know all of us that are involved in that process, we want to help you find those opportunities. And I mean, that's why I got my first job. That's why I got started in politics, was that I fooled you into recommending me for a job when Drew Ryan called you up back in 2009, and you recommended me for the job, and all Drew needed was a few-minute conversation. I mean, he hired me straight off your recommendation. But the reason you had that you're willing to give that recommendation is because we spent that week together. It was because you got to see me operate. You got to see me walk out a little more humble than I walked in. And you got to see me try to operate in those environments.
Well, that was definitely my mistake recommending you to Drew, because it cost me a Supreme Court seat. If I'd had you as my campaign manager, I'd have won that race. But you had already taken the job with Drew, and I couldn't pull you away. It was too good. But I appreciate what you just said, and I hope listeners understand this. That this is one of the few places where you can go. And all of the people you run into, from the speakers to the alumni to our staff that work full time, they literally want to sow into your life. I mean, we're not just looking for a candidate or a client. We care about you finding that purpose and that future that you're intended for, and we want to hand you the tools and the contacts and everything we have, assuming that you're fighting for the right causes. But it's just a desire of our heart. We want to see people succeed in this arena. We're literally trying to raise up warriors, those happy warriors, because we want to win the long-term battle, and we don't want people to end up kind of floundering around in an area that's not their calling. Sometimes you come to something and you see candidates, you go, oh, I want to go do that, but that's not your gifting or not your purpose. Or you see campaign managers. We want to help you find what's the desire God's put in your heart. What are the special giftings He's given you, and help connect you with the right people to get that. So if you come to this and Raz pulls you aside and says, hey, I see something in you on this, or hey, maybe you ought to think about this. That's Raz or me or Nathan Macias or whoever really wanting to sow into you and help you find that calling for yourself.
I know that's something that I find incredibly rewarding, being able to help promote the conservative movement and get that next generation coming up. And I know that's something you derive a whole lot of energy from. It's absolutely probably the best part of what we get to do. I feel like that's that lasting legacy that I mentioned in the intro. By having all these young people that we get to work with and help to encourage and get placed, that's what we want to be able to look back on. When my beard's as gray as your beard, I want to be able to look back on that and be excited about these young people that are taking on these huge roles. And I thank you for allowing me to be part of that and come down there and help every year. It's one of my favorite parts of the year to go down there and help and kill a bunch of bills, because that's always honestly my favorite part.
Yeah, of course it is. Yes, it's good stuff, man. Well, we're super proud of what you're doing now, and so many of our other graduates as well. And it really is a great environment to. It's definitely not a safe space like on colleges today, because people are going to tear you apart if you've got a bad idea and it violates the principles, but in a good way. It's going to sharpen you and make you better. It is a safe learning environment from the standpoint of these are all people that do care about your future, and that's not just to the young people that are listening to 16 to 25-year-olds, but that 45-year-old that's thinking right now about running and considering it. This is a great place for you to really figure out if that's where you're supposed to be.
It's an awesome opportunity to take whatever you're thinking you want to do in politics or your interest level, whether you're just wanting to continue voting and supporting good candidates or whether you want to run. It's a great crucible to try those questions and the possibilities of that future in. Because I've seen people come through Citizen Track and the normal academy that were just sure they were going to run, or on the other hand, sure that they would never run, that their parents or somebody else had just encouraged them to go or said, hey, that's what you're doing with your summer week. And on the other side, they come out with totally different appreciation for the process, and there's different doors that are opening to them. And it's my favorite part. I've said a lot of things are my favorite part. I just love the entire week, but one of my favorite things is seeing some of the young people come in, and you judge them all, right? When you first see them, you kind of start sizing them up, hearing them speak to each other, and you start kind of figuring out, okay, who's going to be the top dog, who's going to be the gunners, and who are going to be the quiet mice in the corner. And I love the ones that absolutely blow you away. The quiet one that sits over there in the corner, and then all of a sudden they're at the back mic, they're on the house floor, absolutely ripping that gunner to shreds because he hadn't thought through his bill right. And it's that's one of those things where you look for those people, or I know you do. You look for those people and you try to help get them out there in front, and you see what Providence does in their lives that week and how they come out stronger. And those are the people you get to see, like the Jonathan Hills. I mean, Jonathan, when he came through with me, he was not somebody that I didn't expect him to be the first ones from our class to be elected state rep. He's a quiet guy, very contemplative, very strong principled. But, man, that guy's doing rock star work out there in South Carolina right now. And I love seeing it. Yeah,
no, you're exactly right, man. And sometimes it's from year to year with a student that comes 2 or 3 or 4 years. First year they come and they don't even get on the mic, they hardly say anything, and then the second year they come, they really start finding their way, and then third year all of a sudden they're running the show. That is really, really encouraging to watch. And sometimes they find out, just like you're saying, they may have thought they were going to run for office, and they find out, no, my strength is over here in something else. But we've had multiple Citizen Track attendees come and think they were just going to, become better citizen activists that are now serving as state senators, one here in Texas and one in another state. And so, that you just don't know what God has for you. And it's just a great environment to just all of a sudden have all those different interactions with these people from all different areas of the culture and places of influence. And our speakers do come from, we have them come from the media world that are really out in LA and other areas making a difference, education, all kinds of different areas. And those are, I think, divine appointments for some students that are all of a sudden for the first time going to go, boom, that's the one, man. That's the one that I want to do.
Man, I love it. And I'm excited about this year. I'm hoping we have an awesome, great class down there and get to come down and kill some bills and have fun with you guys. Now, but that's only a small part of what you and your family do. So as we're kind of wrapping up, give us an idea of some of the other places we can find you online and the other stuff from TV show and all the other fun stuff that you and your family are doing to promote liberty.
Sure. The most fun is Chasing American Legends. That's our little project we did traveling across the country, investigating heroes and myths from history. And we had comedian Brad Stein and Senator Birdwell and David Barton and a bunch of others guest star in various episodes. So it's a really fun 12-episode deal. They can get online at christiancinema.com or watch it on PureFlix. We'll have it later this year, or Dove Channel. But it's a great way to learn and actually enjoy. It's kind of that Happy Warrior thing. Each episode is really entertaining and fun, but it's part of the fight too. It's really got a principle that we're driving home and teaching, and our goal is to get people hooked on history, really learning from the past so that they can, really chart the right course going into the future. Chasing American Legends is the name of it. It's at my website, rickgreen.com, or some of those networks that I mentioned. And then, my work with Wall Builders continues to be really, I always think Patriot Academy, I'm like you, that's really the legacy and is going to be the long-term most important. But anytime I get to learn at the feet of David Barton and be involved with him, I love it. So people can listen to our radio program, Wall Builders Live, at wallbuilderslive.com, or we're on about 300 stations around the country. And that's just kind of a daily dose. It's a 30-minute show where we're interviewing some U.S. senator or legal person that's arguing before the Supreme Court, or an activist that's made a difference, or David's just talking about some area of the Constitution. It's just a great learning, quick 30 minutes every day to really have an optimistic view. I call it being a pragmatic optimist, because we really look at the reality of what's going on. We don't perfume it up. We look at the good, bad, and the ugly. But then we say, yeah, but look, God's in charge. We do our duty. We leave the results up to him. Look at all these great victories that are happening in the culture. Don't get discouraged when you look at all the negative, and stay in the fight. And so Wall Builders Live is a great place for people to go as well.
Those are all great resources, ones that I take advantage of on a regular basis. And I've seen some of the episodes of the TV show and definitely had a few laughs and learned some good stuff. So hope folks will check it out. As we are wrapping up, I just want to give you a last chance to give some words of advice for the people that are thinking about running for office. What are some things that they should consider, and some of the last words of wisdom to leave them with?
Man, just get in the fight. It may not be as a candidate. It may be as a staffer, or as even just volunteering on a campaign. But if you're looking at this and you're considering it, and for whatever reason the doors don't open and you decide not to run, do not check out of the process. Take all of that same time and energy that you were going to put into a campaign and put it into volunteering for an organization, or going down to Austin and testifying, or wherever you may happen to be, whatever your state is. Find a way to invest in freedom. I think every single one of us, it's incumbent upon us to spend at least 1, 2, 3 hours a week investing in freedom. Invest your dollars into freedom. Invest in good candidates. Invest in students for Patriot Academy. Start setting aside 5 to 10% of your income to literally invest in the future. If we don't do that, we're going to lose the country. I mean, like I said, I'm an optimist, but I'm also pragmatic. I'm looking at this and going, hey, the other side is investing billions of their dollars into moving our country to socialism. We have to be willing to invest a small part of our income into good causes out there in order to save this country and to save the republic. So be willing to take that time. Learn. Don't just jump out there and run for office, but actually invest in learning for yourself. Take a Constitution class, get the principles, go through the RAS's training so that you can understand how to win. It's not enough to be right. It's not enough to pound the bully pulpit with the right principles. You've got to have the right strategy as well, and that means taking the time to be a good student on these things so that you're like the men of Issachar. You understand the times and you know what to do. You got the right principles, but you know how to win the day with those principles as well.
Well said, sir. Well, you can find out more about the work that Rick does at rickgreen.com or patriotacademy.com. There are opportunities whether you want to go and attend Patriot Academy, whether you want to help send someone else there and help fundraise to help promote their ability to go this summer. Whether you got a kid or a cousin or a grandchild that you want to have apply, whatever the opportunities, we'll have all those links and the ways to get a hold of Rick in the show notes. Rick, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And I'm excited to get down there with you guys again this summer and help train some new Patriots.
Hey, I appreciate it, Raz. Great being with you, man. Keep up the great work.
Well, you guys check out the show notes for Rick's contact information and all the different links, and we'll talk to you guys again next week.
Please subscribe and rate us on iTunes to help spread the word. We'll be back with you next week with more campaign insights from My Campaign Coach.